each area and say, if I buy a single family home of this quality, how much is it assessed in each of the townships? And then you'd have the dollars that are generated to compare that similar property equally. But you've got to remember that each municipality sets their own service standards, sets their own service levels based on the feedback from the community. So even though they may be higher, their service levels that their residents expect may be different. So the big thing is to ensure that what we're doing within the township here is achieving the service expectations of your residents. And so the budget before you is presented to say, this is what we believe is required to maintain and enhance some of those service levels on that.
Yeah, Mr. Brenneman.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Fairweather. Steve, I'm wondering if you can, further to that recent exchange, just also comment though on the realities of the provincial assessment system, the fact that there hasn't been a reassessment done since 2016, I believe, and what realities that actually does in terms of creating a level or the type of playing field that creates across the board as well.
Through the mayor, there's different ways that the assessment's looked at, but when you get into a reassessment year, there's winners and losers on a revaluation. So as long as your property goes up by the exact percentage of the overall increase in assessed value, then you should in retrospect pay the same amount of taxes. However, my belief is that what you're going to see is probably on the next reassessment is the residential properties have increased at a much greater rate than your commercial industrial sector. So you're probably going to see a shift on the tax by class shifts onto the residential and off the commercial industrial. Don't know when that's going to happen from the province. They're struggling with it. There's been some challenges that have been presented, challenging the methodology that MPAC utilizes for valuing properties. And they're trying to sort through that before they do another revaluation. So I'm not sure how that will play out, but based on, if you review some of the sales data and stuff like that, the residential sector has been increasing at a much greater percentage than the commercial industrial sector value of properties.
Can I bring back to reserves again? And is there any kind of standard or sort of a best practice in terms of what level of reserves a municipality should hold?
There is some standards, but like I said, when you get into your infrastructure reserves, which are the ones that are predominantly going into the deficit position, normally those require an analysis be conducted to look at where is your infrastructure at. If you lose, you look at your vehicles and equipment, you try and look at your fleet, sort of where it's at, where's the life cycle of the various vehicles that you own, and when is the expected replacement cost, and then you take that and you usually inflate your value of your assets by a certain inflationary factor and come up with a value of here's how much I need in this year. And then you usually bring that back through an annuity to the current year and say, this is the annual funding that's required to sustain that. And that's the analysis that really needs to be done so that we can come back to council, because you're going to have years where you're above and below the average. But on a life cycle of an asset, you have been putting away sufficient funding to replace and sustain your asset. Some of the challenges that have been faced is through COVID, the prices on some of the pieces of equipment have doubled on that. So, I mean, pickup trucks were one that went from probably $35,000 to almost $70,000 to replace. They're starting to stabilize again. But over the period of time, if you've been doing replacements, it's been challenging. Some of them you can't get equipment. Some of the pieces of equipment you're going to buy, it's like an 18-month lead time to get them in, and some of the vehicles and equipment. So it's a matter of getting a handle on where we should be and updating those analyses of those various reserve funds. just be aware that, in that ask this year of going down, you also have a significant draw on your development charges this year of almost $4.2 million. So that's expected as you go along and put money away. You need to build the assets that are within your study. It comes out in that year. So it's not unusual to see that, but your main ones that are driving your deficits are your reserve funds necessary for maintaining and sustaining your infrastructure.
Thank you. Councillor Schwint.
Would it be possible to get last 5 or 7 years of this table for Tuesday night?
Through the mayor, we should be able to pull that. We've got the budget books and information that went out from the report, so we should be able to pull that together.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more? Go ahead.
So I apologize. I did find the debt on that you were asking about in relation to what would we be allowed to do if we wanted to be within the cap. So based on our projections and the amount that's committed already, you'd be looking about 6.5 million in new debt that would keep you within your funding cap of 319.
We're at about 3.5 right now.
No, you're well below the 319. So if you wanted to take it, what I'm saying is based on existing debt that's out there, if
Yeah.
you wish to hit the cap and be at your per capita cap, you'd be able to issue about 6.5 million
Right.
in new debt.
Which would take us to about 10, if I'm not mistaken. I think we're at
Would take you
3.5
up
million now.
just around the $9-10 million range.
Perfect, thanks.
And the provincial cap you're gonna get for us, right? Or do you have that too? Just,
Through the mayor, the
Comparison.
last update on the provincial cap is they're saying you could increase your debt capacities to service $5.1 million of debt payments. If you take that out and factor that out to a 10-year debenture at 5%, that's just a little over $39 million. If you push that out to a 20-year, it's about $63.5 million of new debt. But their cap is a little misleading because you have to service that debt. So you're required to make the payment. So if $5.1 million is the payments, that's a significant tax rate increase.
yeah, I don't think we want to go there, but just for comparison. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna sort of try to wrap this up and we'll be back again Tuesday at 6. Is there anything else that we want from staff, from Director Fairweather, from CAO Brenneman, or for Tuesday night so that we can maybe finish up our conversation?
Just if we could get a guideline of the debt council wishes us to sort of look at coming back with options to get down to, that would be
Okay.
helpful for staff.
Okay. Councillor Schwinn.
So I was hoping to save, I said 4.2 million new debentures this year. No, reduce the proposed by 4.2.
So that puts us around 7, if I've got my numbers in my head right.
Which potentially if we're removing Peel at 2.9, that's another, like, it's 2 million left. Essentially.
Less.
If I
Yeah.
can make a suggestion, and it's arbitrary, I know, but could we try to get it within our council imposed cap? If we're aiming for something, that would be an arbitrary target.
Through you to the rest of the council, I'm just wondering, or maybe the director, how much debt we carried last year? Just for numbers, so we have an idea, and then maybe that's a target as well. If we carried 7, if we want to hit 7 again this year, as opposed to increasing. This is another option.
Through the mayor, currently we have in 2024, you'd have there's a small debenture that expires at the end of 2024. That'll be your last year of payments within the water fund. And it's about $45,000 in principal and interest. So those will be factored in. And then you were asking about the other one that we have outstanding. The operating budget would have principal and interest payments of about $261,000 to service the outstanding debentures. On that, you're gonna have about 2.2 million still outstanding to be repaid. That's the one that runs to 2034. The other, we have a new debt that was issued in 2023 for the sanitary sewer for Industrial Drive. It was issued at 1.2 million, just a little under 1.2 million, and the first year of payments will be in 2024. So they have a expenditure of $101,800 roughly, and that'll be within the wastewater budget.
Was that your question? Who asked it?
No, Kayla, I think you
Kayla.
were asking what level of debt we issued or.
Yeah, what was comparatively, how much debt did we take on last year?
As a
And so if,
total.
as a total, so say we did 6 last year and we doing 11 this year, do we want to match what we did last year? Or I'm just trying to get a sense of how much debt we took on last year as a total.
Or what was the aggregate debt last year?
Aggregate, yeah, that's what
I'd have to pull the budget book for that. I think it was just a little over 4 million, I think was the ask last year on it, but it rolls forward into this year's budget is the way that they keep rolling it forward. So the ask in total is about 11.5. There is some small amounts of debt, a few, maybe $30,000 or $40,000 of internal debt that you still have for some of your streetlight relamping that you did for the LED. That's built in the base budget. I think that's around 60,000 and change. And then there's a small amount within finance of about $30,000 or $40,000 for some internal debt that's there. But the major debt that's outstanding is the number that I just gave you. So you have about 3.4 in debenture debt outstanding. And then, so then if we were to look at that, that's the payments that I just told you. And then if you're looking at new debt, we would be looking at floating about the 6.5 if that's the target that council wishes us to come back at.
In the debenture line, there were a couple of items, and I'm not gonna try to take time to find them, but there were a couple of items that were just very short term. Does council want those included in the bottom line of the debenture, or some that were internally funded and some that were, I think the internally funded ones were short term. Councillor Grant?
Thank you for you. I would generally support the shorter term ones, especially if they are the ones that are going towards like a property and then that we're flipping afterwards. So I'd be fine with that.
So remove those from the net. Okay. So did I hear 6.5? Is that what I heard as a kind of random number to to suggest?
Somewhere, I think Eric was asking for 4.6, 4.4, but Councillor Trudeau was asking for us to get back to our per capita debt amount, which might be where the 6 is
That was
coming
the
from.
6, yeah, that was the 6.5, I guess.
So maybe
Yeah.
that's a range between the per capita and like the 4.4. I don't know, whatever.
Sure.
Ranges are good. Yeah.
It's gonna be
Okay.
a launch pad for conversation more than anything, right? It's not set
Yeah.
in stone.
Councillor
We could
Burgess,
look at the implications.
yeah. Councillor Burgess?
I was just gonna ask how Counselor Schwinch came up with 4.2. If he had reasoning behind it.
Yeah, that was hours ago. I was trying to add up the debentures that I thought were for operating type stuff. That just bothered me. So it was hot mix and road conversion, Peel Street Bridge, and a couple others redevelopment ones that to me was just operating. So it had to come out of debentures.
So you wanted to remove those from the total debenture?
Yep.
Could it
Okay,
though
that's-
theoretically
that's
be,
different.
we're keeping it as a debenture, but maybe we're finding savings, so we're still using the road this year as debenture. But we're basically removing the cost of that debenture from other projects. So say you remove Peel Street, that's taking
2.9.
2.9 out of the top, the hot asphalt, even though we're still debenturing it.
No,
Potentially, no, you'd like to,
it's gotta be more than that, unfortunately, I think.
So the 4.2 though was 11.5 minus 4.2.
Yeah.
So we're down to just about the 6.5.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
Rounding error.
Okay, so I think we're on the same page then. Councillor Burgess.
So just for clarity on that topic, either way, that operating expense is still gonna be debentured. It's just we're finding other projects to
To
delay
push.
to pretend that, sorry, pretend's the wrong word. To lower at that amount. Cause we're not gonna find savings in the operating to make it happen.
No,
Sorry, I thought we'd look at a few other things that could provide incremental savings if we deferred half of a fire truck or reduce that budget if we push off the car, those type of things. And talk about staffing position on the bylaw enforcement, how that can be restructured.
So, but I think that's another conversation, isn't it? Cause I think they were gonna come back trying to cut back on capital projects to save debenture money as opposed to finding savings in operating, which is what you're talking about.
Either or work for me.
Councillor Cadeau.
I think we have to entertain an increase in the general levy as well for things like road conversion and the hot mix resurface. This is stuff that we have to continue to do on a yearly basis. So just going into debt to cover this year doesn't get that increase that we're gonna need year over year in order to maintain these roads. We need to raise the general levy so that we can afford this stuff, not just this year, but next year and the year after and the year after that. It's something that we need to address now, not next year or the year after.
So can we come back with some kind of a comparison for us to look at and talk about that shows some adjustments from debenture to levy and what that would look like? I don't think we'll go there because I think it'll be more than even Councillor Cadeau might want to study, but if you can show us those things, I think we can have an intelligent conversation about it.
Yeah, and to that point, like even if we're not debenturing that whole value, if we're raising the general levy next year, it's bringing those taxes up and we're getting that tax revenue so that we can address some of these underlying infrastructure deficits that we have. So I'm not saying that we have to move all of it from the debenture, but 0.5%, 1%, it's all going to add up and it's not unreasonable looking at our tax rate the way that it is right now.
So I think what I'm hearing from council is we want to look to the future, but we want to look at how we can still be reasonable in our tax rates, but also at the same time take care of some of these areas of deficiency that have sort of evolved over time. So good luck. Is that enough information for staff? Yes. Councillor Bryant.
I just have a general question, and it would be, I guess, for Stephen. In Woolwich Township, do we know how many homes would be listed in that $418,000 price range that they base the taxes on? Because it used to be, I mean, it was 276,000. This is going back a few years, but there was very few homes in Woolwich that fell into that particular bracket. I'm just curious what the percentage of homes that would be in that $418,000 bracket would be. Just for perspective.
Yeah, through the mayor,
I'm
I
not
don't have that
expecting
off.
to
I'd
get
have
it.
to get Teresa to look at our assessment roll and
Yeah,
see the 418 is based on the total region-wide
right.
assessment for residential and
Yeah, I'm just
dividing by the
curious.
number of units.
Yeah,
there.
how much of
Yeah.
Woolwich would fall into that tax base?
Mhm.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to council. I think to Councillor Bryant's question, that's also why a number of years ago, finance did the stat, which is, what is the increase per 100,000 of value? Because that would help in terms of education and awareness for any property owner to say, well, my assessment is actually 750. I can do a calculation. So I think Stephen did present that information. And that shows, okay, if it was 8.7, here's how much per 100,000 would go up. I mean, we can still get that information, but I think that's key for council and the public to be aware of how much that is raised per 100,000 of assessed value.
Yeah, I think when we were doing some of the other comparisons that were done across the different municipalities, I think that's where the average value was helpful. Okay. Are we ready to adjourn for today? Councillor Cadeau, moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? Thank you, and we'll be back again Tuesday, January 30th at 6 p.m. Yeah, I guess that is all we need to do, right? Very good. Thank you. Thank you, anyone who's listening at home, and we'll see everyone on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.